How is everybody today? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, ready for another fun and exciting challenge for you on the vise. However, I'm not just going to put this challenge on you, I'm going to challenge myself a bit as well. So this is going back to our crayfish jig here that we tied last week. A lot of fun, a lot of different aspects of maybe transitioning from a fly to a jig, or for those of you that watched the video, from a jig back to a fly. There was something left in that pattern though that I needed to find, and I think I found it. And here comes the challenge for today. So we're going to tie this frog. So the challenge for myself is doing this on camera. There's a lot going on and it's not going to be super simple. The other part is this was just a prototype. I needed to see how the materials played and all of that. I'm not super stoked on the overall finished product, but I'm pretty close. So I think we can fix that today. And then of course the challenge that I'm going to pose to you is go ahead and tie this sucker after you're finished watching this video. So grab your vise, grab your stuff. Today we are going to have fun on the vise. One thing before we get too far, there is some shank prep involved in tying this frog jig. This 35mm shank will form the rear leg, and so I want this bow-legged, and I'm going to use this for the left leg. So all I'm going to do is come in with a simple plier, grab behind the neck. Do you notice how it's still oriented properly, meaning if I were to tie this on in a usable form, I want the top and the bottom to stay top and bottom. So I'm simply bending this in a lateral way to the side. I'll come down from where that initial one was and come up to the top and kind of do one more. And all the time being mindful to keep this as upright, right? So that I can tie it in like a normal shank. But do you see the bow? Now it's going to come off the main hook and kick out to the side. So I'll do it again on the right side, but this time I'm going to curve toward you a little bit and a little bit. I'm just using my fingers as a little pressure there. And so wherever you want that to sit, about like so, is going to be perfect, I think, for the right leg. And then we'll come in and we'll use our needle and pop her into the vise like so. And then I will show you how we're going to form the front legs on the needle and all that good stuff. But we got to finish these rear legs. So let's get to those. Who's ready to tie that first rear leg? This is the left rear leg. So if you notice, the arm portion of the shank is in the back. That'll be for the foot, and where it attaches to the hook or to the shank dedicated to the hook will be here at the normal attachment point. Just going to get some thread started. This is just some 6/0 in olive. 140 would be great. But if ever there was a time for 210, 3/0, any of that good stuff, now would be that time. Let me get rid of these glasses so I can see up close again. And we're just closing this arm down on this shank. Nothing crazy. Just make sure everything is very solid. So there you can see the shape, that bow-legged effect we're going to give into that rear leg. And this thing's just going to kick and move off the back. And even if they kiss a little bit on the way, down or in a strip or reeling in, they're going to separate when you stop. So in that pause movement, they're going to have the proper relaxation and all that good stuff. This thing's going to be nasty. And so, of course, I love movement, especially Shaggy dub sort of movement. This is a big old chunk here. It's more than I need, I can tell you that. But it's as much as I want. Just going to veil that over the thread, get it up here, nothing fancy. This is all going to just be flowing off that shank. Again, we're just making a little foot movement, right? So this will act like toes and all that good stuff. It is just going to have a little extra wiggle, and I am a fan. Next, we're going to tie this just on the top. So we're not going to treat this the same way we do like tying the other technique that we'll use for the front legs. This will be something completely different than the front portion. I do have water here, so that's what I'm doing. I'm getting my fingers wet, and I'm going to create a tie-in space on this rabbit strip. And this is just barred rabbit. And this is black barred olive variant rabbit strip. So do you see that? There's leather underneath. This is like you were tying slump buster or anything like that. Big thing here, make sure that leather and the rabbit stays on top of our shank. There we go. Position, and then really hammer it down. Make sure it's solidified. There we go. Now I can move this back, get my thread in front of it, and nothing to it. Next. And this is the fun part of doing these sorts of flies. How do you think you keep the rabbit down on a frog leg? You ribbit. Yeah, I couldn't wait for that one. Sorry. I'd like to tell you the jokes will get better, the puns will get better. Chances are they won't. Just going to tie in some small gold wire. Of course, if you want to get cute, match this up. Get some olive wire, green wire, any of that would be great. This is simply to strap this down and make sure everything is as strong as possible. Here I've got a strip of 2mm foam in yellow. Just going to cut a little tie-in spot there. Nothing crazy. Give myself a little angle. I like working with that tie-in foam. And grab that point. Careful not to tear our foam. And I want to just get it as far back as possible so that first wrap will cover all thread wraps. Cleanliness. I know it seems outrageous on something like this. This is pushing the limits, folks. I hope you're brave enough to stick with me through this one. It's going to be a long one, but it's going to be worth it. Here we go. Start with that foam. Do you see what I mean by that first wrap? See how thick that is? It's going to cover where our tie-in spot is, no problem. And then slightly overlapping wraps as we move forward. So we're going to get that nice beefy under leg, if you will, the meaty part. And it's yellow, so it'll contrast with this olive on top. It's a win-win. Just get it up as far as you can and tie that sucker off. It's not going to be super cute here. We're not tying size 18 anything. This is a monstrosity, right? It's a jig. It's meant for dirtiness, meant to get hurt, meant to get chewed on, and we're going to tie it as such. This part's a little goofy. We're not coming straight down with a lot of tension here because there's a curvature going on. So I'm not going to be too concerned with making sure everything is the exact right measurement. I'm just going to get it strapped on gently, and then I'll let the wire do the rest of it. So if you see there, that little gap that I just eliminated, that's what I'm looking for. Find our rib wire, and now we'll treat this like Matuka and simply come through, create a clean spot, try not to let too many fibers down, and move on. Again, just tying a mean jig here that is going to get smashed. So make it strong. Get in there, strap it down. Almost done with this leg already. Feel pretty good about it. Oh, broke that thread. We'll get there. And get one more spot in here with this wire, like that spot. And now I'll lift this up. Try to maintain pressure on this wire. Let me restart my thread here. Told you it'd be a fun challenge. So I was not lying to you. There we go. Got the thread restarted. Haven't let go of our rib wire. And one more sneaky move, which is to tie down that rabbit one more time. Nothing to it. And then this will be, it's like one and a half more wraps of this wire maybe. Just get it through there and finish right behind the hook eye, like so. Really strap that down, get a few good wraps. I can absolutely get that wire pulled back now. I don't want to trap all these fibers that are going to get cut out, so separate them. And now get in there, scissors, cleanly cut out that rabbit. And now I can come in and cleanly remove the wire. And there is our rear leg. And at this point, simply getting all that tied down, creating a clean thread head, if you will, and whip finish. So again, I'm gonna do this again on my side. So we'll have two rear legs, but this is the left leg. And yes, I'm going to head cement this, but I do want to show you exactly what it looks like. I trapped a couple rabbit hairs and just yank them out. But there's the underside. And let me pop this out. And so if you're looking at me and the head of this frog's up here, this will be how that leg sits. And it's going to move off to the side like that as it trails. However, we need to attach that to something. And this is where a 19mm shank comes into play. So if the left leg curves out and comes back toward the hook shank, what I want is to complement and exaggerate that bow. So I'll come in here right where in the middle of the open space in front of the arm in between the hook eye or shank eye. And now I'm going to push this back portion toward you. What is that going to do? Well, this is going to get tied to the shank like so, off the rear. And so now it kicks it off to the side, what will be the left. So imagine when we attach that left leg, just how far away from the shank it will be. And then I can come in and go ahead and simply cut. Yeah, right. There we go. Cut off that hook eye. I don't need it to attach, and we'll get into that here very shortly. So let's get back to this leg that we already tied. On your side, remember, we've only tied the left rear leg. Let me open up the shank. I will get it slipped on. And the way I tie shanks, I come up from the bottom. And why does that matter? Well, because if you do it the same every way, you'll know what top and bottom is. So when you're bending these shanks out, you don't lose track of, uh-oh, is this on my side or is this for the other side? It just makes things a lot easier, I think. So at this point, I will just get some thread going on this shank. And you don't want to do this after the fact. You want to get this all done before you tie your fly. And now it's simply tying that arm down without moving it in the vise too much. Well, let's try that again. Get a better grip this time in our vise. There we go. And simply continue tying down that arm. We don't want to clog this with a bunch of thread. So this is where we'll get this done. I'll move on to the section on my side, and all of this will get dry time because we're going to come in and definitely cement this, all those thread wraps. There we go. I will remove it one more time just for you to see exactly how exaggerated this is going to come off the shank. So again, this little portion here will be tied to the shank. So now you see just how offset that will be from the center line. And that is the whole point we're going for. We want that bow-legged effect. And so there is our rear leg. And I will go ahead and go off camera now and tie my side of that rear leg, and we'll move on. Time for these front legs. As you can see, we do have a needle in the vise. Simply going to start some thread here toward the end. I'm not putting a lot of pressure, and I'm leaving a very, very long tag end. Much like we tied the claws for the crayfish that we did last week. Again, this is going to be, you know, get the foam in there and fold it over and all that good stuff. So why don't we tie the rear legs the same as the front legs? Different from the crayfish, I don't want that exaggerated lift on the rear legs like I wanted in the front claws of a crayfish. So we wrap the foam for that rear leg, so it doesn't float as exaggerated as this version. And even though this is a more exaggerated version, it's the front portion, it's the arm or front leg, whatever you want to term that, of this frog. It doesn't have to float a bunch or not float a bunch. It's a short piece. It's not going to have a lot of movement. It's just going to be there as, again, one of those triggers that is a recognition factor more than anything. So without further ado, let's tie this bad boy up. Got our foam now, and this is again the same 2 millimeter thin, but the difference this time, I'm going to match the width to the width of this rabbit strip. And so let me prep this little front section. And again, you could add that Shaggy dub effect for the toes and all that. I don't think it's necessary. And we're also trying to not bulk up this front arm quite as much. So keep that in mind. Just gonna very simply get this on top. 5-6 thread wraps there. Make sure it's secured in the center on top, and then we can move. And when I say move, I mean we're going to find the seam of where the foam meets. Just be careful because this will spin on you a little bit. Get in there in between the pieces of foam and advance your thread back. Bring the foam down again, both top and bottom, and then you can get your next segment tied, which is, or marked, whatever you want to call that. Let me get this hair out of the way. I'm trying to do this so you guys can see a little bit. So there's my next segment, and reinforce with a little bit more pressure on that last thread wrap. Get this oriented properly so I can see what I'm doing, and find that happy spot where we want to run that thread, like so. Again, this is all very Matuka-esque, so it's nothing you haven't done, nothing you haven't seen, just a different application maybe. There we go. Move on. Now for this front portion, because again I've tied that prototype, I do know that I'm looking for 5 or 6 segments in this spacing, and that should be just about right for the size frog we're tying. A lot going on this one, so again, bear with me. I'm very appreciative of those of you who watch these lengthy, somewhat outrageous videos. I don't think they're too outrageous, otherwise I wouldn't do it. I think they're fun. I think pushing your skill set a little bit, finding your boundaries and going, hey, I think I could do something crazy here. That's all part of what we do. At least it's part of what I do. I don't want to tie the same thing over and over and over. If you do, by all means, embrace that. That's great. Production style tying is not for everyone. It's not always the most engaging or most fun. You know, I'm trying to trap some rabbit. We don't need that trapped in there. And this, you know, if you wanted, you could definitely go down to like a micro pulsator strip or something like that. But keep in mind, the length of that rabbit off the top is not going to change much. So if you want, trim some of that. For me, that's pointless because it's going to get rid of that barring on top. I really like the barring. And so I'm just going with the same rabbit that we use for the legs. By all means, you could switch those legs to some Magnum. That would be great. Make this your own. I'm just showing you how I did it. You know, some of the craziness that sits in my brain and putting it on a vise or on a hook. So again, take what I'm showing you and apply it to what you want to do. Maybe you don't want to tie a frog, but there's something in this that might help you tie that next fly that you've been thinking about. I don't know. We're here to have fun, catch some fish, and learn from each other. So that would be 5 sections. I'm going to go one more again, just because if it's too many, I can always reduce. Guess what I cannot do? Once it's tied, I can't add to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and go for that 6th one. And if you notice, when we tied the rear legs, the end of the fibers off of the rabbit strip go out over, right, off the back end. But this is in the front. It's the front leg or arm. And so we want that, again, for the hair to come over the front on this one. At this point, I'm done with this rabbit strip, but I don't want to cut any of that leather that might be necessary if something slips or any of that good stuff. So I'll just leave that as is. And then this was fun last time trying to figure out how to reach with this outrageous whip finish. And again, for sure, this is where half hitch comes into play and all that good stuff, but we're going to try it anyway. Get it all the way around that good stuff. And one. Let's try that again, see if we can make it a little bit better. All the way around for our second half hitch there. Don't be shy. Get super glue involved. Really make sure that this is well secured. And at that point, you simply give a little shimmy and all of this comes off in one piece. And there is our front leg. And like I showed you before, because of this exaggerated tag end, that's your tension. So if you want to make it curve in, by all means, pull down on that when you tie it in and it will curve it in. Release that tension and it comes back to straight. So this is one of our front legs. And now I will tie the other one off camera. And boy, oh boy, hope you're ready because it's about time to put this frog to practice. Hopefully you have all survived up until now. We have 2 rear legs, 2 front legs. Now it's time to put all this together. In the vise, I do have the Ahrex SA280. Get this, folks, size 2/0. That's right, 2/0. This thing is monstrous. And again, we're throwing this intended as a jig. This is not intended to be a fly. And we are targeting monster bass, maybe even pike. You never know. So this hook, of course, will sit like so when we are all finished. And what we have to do now is kind of look at our legs upside down. So this one, if you look at how our shank is bent, will come off the hook. Let me just get a couple wraps here and get my fingers out of the way, and then you'll see what I'm saying, like so. To facilitate that curvature and that bow-legged effect, that is how we want this coming off the shank. So we're going to tie this to the side of our shank, like so. And before we get too far, just to make sure everything lines up nice and neat, get that one out of our way. And yes, this is a cluster of a fly. So here's where our trainer, if you will, comes into play. We've got some non-lead. Just gonna wrap this around the vise a couple times. And now guess what? I'll bring it up and I will grab some of the material in the rear portion of that foot or leg. And now it's out of my way. Out of your way. Call that good. Here's the curvature of the other leg and the other shank where we attached said leg, and I will simply now match that up on my side so that the rear legs are coming off the same spot. And that's about how hard that was. Call that good. One thing we do need to do though is really solidify all of these goodies. And of course, I'm going to come in with some super glue gel and get a little shot of it on here and smear it all the way around. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to wrap this down with more thread wraps, and it will secure not just the shanks and where we place them and all that good stuff, which is very, very important, but this is going to cover up that super glue and create a very strong attachment. We have that thread base underneath against the hook shank, and now with those dedicated shanks tied to it and then covered with super glue, this is all just going to sort of adhere to itself and become one unit, hopefully. And the whole point of that is strength, simply strength. May as well tie in our body materials now. I know you're excited. I've been waiting on this one for a hot minute. So we are going back to the same mentality that we used on the crayfish jig. So this is the rubber hackle or rubber bugger Hackle from MFC in yellow brown. Now on the crayfish we used Halloween, and I know it might seem a little crazy, Pete, yellow brown. I know, just bear with me. And get that wrapped in right onto the back side there. As you see, I did trim up a little bit on that wire just to expose the working portion I want and to make it a little cleaner tie-in. Oh boy. All right, so we highlighted the replenished stock that we got of our bunny brushes here. And this is barred yellow. And so it's, if you can see on the tips there, there's black and orange at the very tips of this. So it's yellow, but it's got orange and some black barring, and it is going to be outrageously good for this frog. Get that tied in. And yeah, and as far as order of importance, it does matter a little bit. We do want to tie in that rubber hackle first and let the rabbit sort of act as a buffer in the front of it, and everything will train back the way it's supposed to. One difficulty here is we need to add these front legs before we wrap that. One thing I want to consider is I do want at least a wrap or wrap and a half in front of these arms. And so when I'm tying this in, I'm going to leave that little bit of space here. And again, it's tough to be exact on this, but do you see that last section? If I simply sort of use that last section as my little indicator there, tie in behind that, and there's our tension thread. Let me get that out of there. So now I can really strap this down. One thing we do want to keep in mind, these don't necessarily go off to the sides, right? They're top and bottom. They've got that such an exaggerated elbow, if you will. And so it looks as though it's really sticking out to the side. And so we'll just match that angle, and then maintaining top and bottom on the leg itself so that the fur rides the right direction. And again, we're looking for a lot of suggestive movement, meaning I'm not trimming that hair off the leather. You could, by all means, you sure could. And it probably, would look good and all that. I'm not going for the most realistic frog I can tie. I'm going for the best moving frog, the most trigger causing, strike inducing frog I can produce. And when you think about bass fishing, in the world of bass fishing, of course the excitement is top water, but man, I'm telling you, there's so many bass that eat a streamer, eat a jig, eat spinners, all that good stuff. So if you're out there and maybe the temperature is off, maybe it's a storm coming, you never know. Like, these fish don't always eat on top. As exciting as that is, and as much as I enjoy it, sometimes you just have to be prepared for the inevitability that you might have to just catch fish subsurface for a day. So right here, I'm just cleaning up and creating some space, if you will. And let's check our length and our look. So it seems like our front legs are as long as the back legs, and they're close, but not quite. And once we get some material in the front, it's going to eat up some of that spacing. Bring these both up same time, and again, make sure that rabbit is where it's supposed to be, meaning in front of our rubber hackle. And we can start wrapping this bad boy. Hopefully you guys can see okay. Tough to fit all this into that camera view, but bear with me. All right. We'll keep all this separate so you're not grabbing the rabbit from the legs, all that good stuff. Just a couple things going on here. Be patient. That's all I can tell you. Just be patient. If you can be patient, and keep wet fingers. That's a huge factor too. Always got that little container of water with me on the desk. That's a big deal for me. All right. So as you see, I am trying my best not to incorporate any of the rabbit from the legs. It's not always super easy. Be mindful though, we don't need that in there. It's going to throw off our look, our coloration of that underbody yellow. There we go. Loving the look on this so far. At this point, I'm going to attempt anyway, getting all that hair out of there and get a wrap to the front. So what we want to watch for here is that we're not pushing our arms backward, right? That's the biggest thing. And if you're not, well, by all means, get those brushes up to the top. Find out where that hair is coming from. There we are. This looks like a proper mess. And well, I don't know if you knew this or not. When you signed up for watching this video today, that is what we were getting into, is a proper mess. All right, at this point, simply mash. Oh, see that? Don't catch that arm. There we go. Just be mindful. A little tension there. And secure both those brushes down. Take as many thread wraps as needed. And now we can move all that back and get our thread wraps to the front of the brushes. So now come in, and this is, you know, I had a great suggestion. Somebody said they used the toenail clippers for those. I have yet to try that. However, I think it would work just fine. There we go. Got our arms, got our legs back here, and just kicking it. There's your second frog joke if you missed the first one. I told you they would not get any better, but it didn't say that they would be eliminated altogether. Let's flip this over for a second. All right. Where is our little brush here? Let's get some brush time in. Do our diligence. So claw on your side, or claw, the front arm, wanted to twist just ever so slightly, but I think we're going to be okay. Again, once this thing hits the water and it goes under, like, there's going to be so much going on as far as profile, movement, and everything else. So if it's not 100%, is it still going to work? Oh boy. Yes, sir. It sure will. All right. One thing that I didn't care for was the collapse on the top profile of the prototype. And so I have a solution for that. At least I think I have the solution for that. I like this color. I'll show you the top so far of our frog here. So as you can see, these legs will be hanging out behind. These will be the arms waving around here, just kind of floating indiscriminately. And now I just want some, again, trigger recognition of a food source. All right, so what does that mean? Well, it means I'm coming now with the MFC barred Marabou, and this is olive barred black. And you don't need a huge amount of this, but for me, it's just, it's the color factor, it's the a little bit of added movement and all that, and so it's going to break up, you know, any monotony that might be there. Let me get a better section here. And I just like the way Marabou moves in the water. So we're just going to come and cover the top and get that wrapped in like so. Excuse me, tied in. Keep it on the top. Trim out those butts. And yes, we are creating a mess. But again, this is such a big fly. This is our jig, or whatever you're tying it as. I'm tying it as a jig today. And so just be mindful, keep things as clean as possible, but it's not the end of the world. This thing's a monstrosity, and so it's definitely unique. It is not the same as tying a size 18 emerger, that's for sure. All right, so now we're going to work on maintaining that high dorsal profile. So I'm going to come in with a pinch of olive laser dub and go right over the top of that. So I'm just going to veil it. Let's not veil it over the thread today. Let's get another chunk here and try this. And I'm going to do this again on that front shank, because this will be connected to a shank. So if there's anything here, it's that I don't need quite as big a bump as I will use in the front. That front one will form the head shape. And so for that one, we'll get a little bit more aggressive. I do want to sneak this around the hook point. I don't want it grabbing the hook point too much. And then get my thread in front, and now pull this back and simply wrap back to it. And that'll mash that against itself, and again split that around that hook shank. And you see how we're creating some of that upper profile now, or dorsal profile. And that's the whole point. We're almost done. We had all that craziness going on just to build those legs, and now the fly itself is pretty quick. Or the jig, excuse me, I keep saying fly. I wonder why. You think I tie flies or something? So there's our whip finish. Let me cut this thread out. And one thing to be mindful of, go ahead and trim everything that you can get to before you cement this. And the reason being, if you cement it and then try trimming it out, you're going to end up with cement on your scissors. You're going to smear cement into places it shouldn't necessarily be. That's the other downside. Do you see these exposed fibers? If for some reason you get cement into those, and now you try to attach your shank, well, you're going to just stiffen all that stuff, and it will act like a block, meaning when it's attached, it's not going to swing freely off that shank. And so you may as well just use a standard hook, or single hook, non-articulated style at that point, because it's just not going to move for you. Keep that in mind. That's why we don't clog the eye on articulated flies. I really want to make sure though that I am getting a good amount of cement, especially underneath here where our knot is from our whip finish. Beauty. Doesn't look like much now. This is one of those, again, trust the process. A lot going on, I understand. So coming up through the bottom here, and this is our Spawn 90-degree Jig Shank, 20 millimeter, and on this bad boy is the new Fathom bead, and much like the crayfish, this is size 10 millimeter. But before we get into that, I'm going to adjust the camera so that we're back on the right level. Here we are, jig now in the vise, ready to go. We are almost finished. I'm so glad you guys have stuck with this. Let me just move that bead up into position, start my thread, and you can see there's not a lot to lock in that bead in. The design on this is just next level. I do need, however, to mash that arm down, so let's go ahead and do that, like so. I'll come all the way up front again, get some extra thread wraps just to set that bead. Don't be shy. We're tying everything down. We're getting it all done in one time, like so. At this point, just wash, rinse, repeat what we did on that back section. So we're going to get our rubber hackle tied in like so. I don't need quite that much sticking out for a butt end, so I'm going to come in and cut it. Mash all that good stuff down. And now time for our bunny brush. And again, trim out a clean little spot. Get that set in. Good to go. Once again, just a little bit long on that butt section. Trim it off. I don't know about you, I'm pretty excited to see this thing through. Make sure it's the improvement that I was looking for. And again, a lot going on here. A lot. So be patient. And let's start wrapping. I'll go ahead and get some moisture on my fingers there, just to sort of help me see what's going on and make it a little bit more visible for you guys as we wrap. And sort of give it a shimmy as you go. Make sure they're not twisting together in an unruly fashion. And even if they are, I hate to tell you, it'll work out just the same. It'll be fine. Don't stress too much if possible. Okay. Now let's tie these off. And again, change this to the colors that you think are the best for your spot. If you have, just all green frogs, well, guess what? Tie an all green frog. If they're more brown than this, it'd be pretty simple to adjust that too. The whole point here is we're having fun. We're tying new stuff, getting a little crazy. Not just tying the same old, same old. And this is going to now become, you see what's going on here? There's a lot going on. So there's our body. Great, nothing to it. And it's a wash, rinse, repeat for sure. So let's look for a nice feather here with a lot of fibers coming off of it. There we go. Just want a nice recognition factor from the bar olive here, right? There's a lot of beautiful coloration on frogs. So we're just going to give them a little taste of a couple different bits. And come right over the top. As far as how far back, just maybe match it up to the almost the end of that first chunk of laser dub, and call it good. Front, trim out all those butts. Voila. And clean it up. See, my problem is this. I just want to get this fly wet, and I can't. I have to be patient. Much like you at home, I just have to be patient. Not always easy. I'm not the best at it, that's for sure. But I try. One last veil of said laser dub. Going pretty beefy here. Definitely more than that rear portion. Again, we're trying to maintain that head shape. That head is significant on a frog. And guess what? If our head shape is significant, so is our water pushing abilities. I do want to make sure this sits right on the top here. So be patient. Get that veil exactly where it's supposed to be. Thread in, well, one more thing here. When you're wrapping that front portion to get this to veil properly on any fly, tie it all the way forward. That's the more crucial part, if you will. And then just bring your thread and it'll catch there. It'll get back to it. There we go. And now, again, just a little visual check. Make sure everything is running back the way it should be. I do have a little comb here. I'm not going to add much pressure because I'll yank all that beautiful dubbing out. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm simply trying to make sure it's even around this shank here. There we go. That's what I wanted. Check my side halfway down, your side's halfway down, calling that a win. And then again, because we've got that magic little bowl of water, I'm just going to come in and sort of tame some of this. Not to a huge extent, of course, but there we go. Feeling good about that. I can see where I'm looking anyway. That's a pretty good start on one whip finish, and then we'll add a second one. Beauty. Trim out our thread, and we can get some head cement going. Now, if you noticed, I don't know if you saw on that prototype, he had eyes. And, you know, we've talked about eyes here and there. Is it important? Is it necessary? All that stuff. Boy, you know, if you're talking, should I put him on a fly? I'm always a proponent for adding triggers, and then let the fish decide which one, you know, made him eat. It's not up for us necessarily to decide that. However, if we know legs catch fish, we know movement from Marabou catches fish, we know articulated movement catches fish, and you happen to have all that into the same fly, by all means, you should have some expectation of success. Once you've had that success, then you build on it. All right, time for the last element here. We're looking to place these eyes, and for the eyes, you'll probably have to find something different than this. These are frog hot orange eyes that we used to have here at Spawn, and it is a Spawn eye, but I do believe we are out of all of those. I'll check in the inventory before posting anything in the material list, but I'm 92% sure we're out of all those. I'm just gonna put a little drop of super glue back here where I think the frog eye should be. Try to match it up best as I can on your side. And now just keep that vertical bar vertical on these eyes for as long as I can. Get that stuck on there. So yes, I will be coming in after this dries to get it wet to make sure it is the fly I had envisioned. Once I do that, I will be snapping some photos and posting that as the thumbnail. But you get the idea. This is a very suggestive frog, tied jig style, monster 10mm bead, the Fathom bead from Spawn, which is just over 1/4 ounce. Serious weight to this thing. A lot of fun here. I'm very glad that you guys stuck with this. Hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today. And if you had fun and you want to keep tying crazy stuff like this, well, there's one sure way. By all means, hit like, hit subscribe, and we will see you all on the water.